everyone, and welcome to the Contingency Plan Podcast. My name is Jedi Master David, and with me, as always, is Darth Austin.
Hello, everyone.
Well, we are back once again. It's pretty crazy. Still doing it. Still doing the COD pass.
Too consistent. It won't last.
No, it'll never last. We are going to run through. Oh, let's see. What is this? Episode 3. Yeah, episode 3, chapter 19, The Convert, within the Mandalorian, universally recognized is the second worst episode of this season.
Oh, really? That's great to know. There's one worse than this coming up.
I've heard a lot of people give this one a lot of crap, and obviously when we get into the review, I'll kind of explain why that's sort of BS. But I know I'm not going to do anything spoilery, but like when we get towards the end, this is the kind of stuff that just irritates me. So we talked last week about, we're going to get new movies, like 3 new movies focusing on different eras. Y'all know that we don't necessarily agree with all the directions that Disney's taken Star Wars in. That's not a secret. But boy, did I hear so many people complain about this season and the end of this season.
Yeah, I did hear a lot of people. I'm pretty in the dark. I chose to be, so it wasn't a spoiler, but I did hear a lot of people complain about this season compared to the last 2. That had just kind of fallen off. It was another disappointment from Disney, and I don't know. I haven't seen it so far. I haven't seen anything amazing, but
yeah, and
everyone's extremely negative towards Disney right now for varying reasons. So I have to wonder if some of it's just the mob kind of going after Disney in general.
Right. Well, I mean, like I saw one specific comment from somebody who is like a cosplayer, the 5 of First, all that good sort of stuff. And just the kind of crap, because it was like, you get a lot of people who hate spoilers, right? Mm-hmm. And I'm not a big fan of that either. But, this person posted basically, there's no spoilers, technically. There's no end credit scene. There's none of this and there's none of that. The season is garbage because and when we get into the final, I'll try and remember to bring this back up because I think it's relevant to that final episode. But I just kind of looked at that and I was like, one, I think it's dumb. First of all, this isn't Marvel. Post-credit scenes, what are we talking about?
On every episode?
I'm not a fan of post-credit scenes anyway. But
and honestly, if there was a post-credit scene, I would have missed it because I rushed right through.
Yeah,
I didn't. I don't finish credits very often,
and so I'm just meaning this for the final episode.
Oh, I thought you meant this episode.
No, okay. Sorry. So for the finale, but you're talking about somebody who is a self-professed like Star Wars fan and like just does all the cosplays and always seen them get very excited about stuff. And it was a little disappointing because like, you're seeing a lot of the hardcore fans being really influenced by this. And like Mando has largely been considered to be like the saving grace of current Disney Star Wars, I think.
Yeah, the pinnacle for sure.
Yeah, at least in the show line. I personally really, really enjoyed Andor. I thought Andor was pretty genius in the way they did that season, despite a slow start. But man, I do hear
about that, and I have to question how many people are truly watching the entire season before they write their comments.
Yeah, it's just crazy. But under that comment, like there were people that were genuinely, pissed off. It's like, I don't want spoilers. It's like, can you just like not say this stuff? It was like, well, it's not a spoiler. It's like, but it is. Like, you're giving this expectation, which is spoiling the potential end or whatever. So yeah, it was just odd. I've been seeing a lot of that lately, and we've talked about it back and forth, throughout the probably last 2 years about how unenjoyable the fandom becomes at times,
I think that the fandom has become extremely politically charged personally. And a
There's
lot of that
yeah.
has to do with, I think that a lot of that has to do with people's opinions of Disney as a company in general, not Star Wars. And I can
Yeah.
see where they're tied in. But Mando, especially this episode, has nothing to do with the political BS that's going on. So any just review bombing is kind of illegitimate, in my opinion, because of that.
Yeah, I mean, right off the bat, though, IMDb, 6,576 ratings. This episode has a 7. So not like garbage. And honestly, there's only, well, the what's considered the worst episode is in the 6s. So, but like, you know, we've been through the first 2 episodes. So the first episode, The Apostate, 7.4. Last week's Minds of Mandalore, 8.2. And there's a lot of ratings. This isn't like 1,000 ratings. This is pretty much all of these have had either on the low end 13,000, on the high end like 18,000 ratings. So like they're getting rated pretty heavily in that sample size. So, but yeah, I just it's tough, and I feel like we talk about this a lot though, you know, which is also kind of crappy too. But you know, it is sort of the state of the Star Wars and so forth. It's kind of I don't know, it's kind of crappy.
We certainly didn't pick the easiest fandom to be a part of.
No.
It's very, very polarizing. And I mean, kind of goes to the diversity of the fandom. I will give it that. That's kind of a good thing in a way.
Well,
I think
it does have a diverse fan base. That there's a lot of different people who really enjoy this stuff, and it's just, I don't know. It's just sad when you see so much in the vocal dissension, because like it happened to Star Trek too along the way. You know, some of the fans were not overly happy with like Discovery or Lower Decks, or you know, even what they did with Picard and so forth. So it's tough. It's definitely tough, and you know, it's funny because you either want these things to be these in-depth lore monsters, or you know, you want to appeal to the super casual Disney Plus fans who probably didn't buy Disney Plus for Star Wars specifically. It's really hard to find that medium ground, because they do have to sort of hit up on as much of the demographic as possible. But you know, it's just weird. And as we talk about this episode, it's just weird to me that like, you know, this one wasn't liked better by people, but I've heard people call it boring.
Yeah. I can understand that. You know, it's stuff like that makes you wonder if that's the true reason George gave it up. It's not because he didn't have ideas. Just, I think he kind of saw that he had created something so large that he couldn't manage it anymore. And there was such a diverse group of people to entertain that it becomes stifling, I believe, to try and reconcile that many people and not alienate people that, I mean, he cared about all his fans. He truly did. And I think the alienation of it kind of made it difficult for him. And Disney certainly has the broad shoulders to deal with this. At least they should.
Well, he got torn apart for the prequels.
He did.
Like
he got torn apart for having a vision, and really, the thing that he created with that is so much more substantial than anything that Disney created. And I don't mean that in a slam to Disney, but it's a fact. I mean, they haven't created the type of backstory and lore that George did with the prequels, and it's the mob being the mob. There's always going to be hate, unfortunately.
Well, it's just like, what do you want though? I mean, what's the
that's
want?
The thing. They can't agree on what they want because there's too much of an agenda one way or the other to keep it pure, to keep it, you know, move it towards a new direction.
Well, what does pure? What does pure even mean? Because I mean, everybody gives Dave Filoni so many. Dave Filoni should run. You realize he's behind a lot of this. Like he's there. Like
he is.
He's not involved. He's involved all the time. Everybody gave oh, John Favreau should take over for Kathleen Kennedy. Dave Filoni should take over for that. It's like, yeah,
They're
but you realize
liaisons for her in a
they're,
way.
yeah, they're there. They're there. They're involved in like all of this stuff. It's just kind of crazy to think that like, so you don't think that this is their vision? Now, granted, and you're right. Like there's certainly a lot of agenda driven stuff in just media today, trying to push a more diverse cast, letting more people kind of see them in quotations, see themselves in characters and so forth. And like, it just baffles me because like Star Wars and Star Trek, both star shows, have always been very diverse. Like there's always been a diversity of a lot of different things. Now, granted, you talk about the originals, you know, the original trilogy, you're shooting them in a specific time. You have one black character. We get that, but like since then there's been a lot more, a lot more across the board, and heck, even when you have Jar Jar, who Ahmed Best comes through and does Jar Jar, you rip him a new one for years. You know, he was getting slaughtered out there.
Now that would be considered hate speech and racism. Ironically,
You would think
to do that.
And granted, like I get it, Jar Jar was a little annoying. I think that they could have backed off, and they obviously did in the subsequent movies. But you know, it wasn't that bad. But it's just like now it's almost like, okay, so the Mario movie. What I'm not gonna watch it. I don't care. I enjoyed the games when I was a kid. I don't care about animated movies. It just doesn't do anything for me. I don't have that type of nostalgia.
Yeah.
But I saw so many things about, well, the audience was just a bunch of mid-30s to late 30 males and stuff like that. And you know, that nostalgia doesn't always reach everybody.
Yeah. Well, and I don't think everyone needs to be reached, and that's something we need to accept with media.
Yeah.
I understand having diversity in cast, and I'm all for it, but I don't always need to be heavily connected with a character to enjoy them. I don't need to see myself in a character, because what's the point in seeing yourself in a character in a movie? The point is to see something amazing and interesting. We all lead pretty mundane lives compared to all these heroes. I don't see why anyone should be able to see themselves in these heroes.
Well, I mean, that's an interesting thing because, you know, I think that there are two lines of thought for making connection with a medium. It's either you see yourself in the character or you just have really good writing that captivates you. So you're either character driven or story driven. But I think that there's a happy medium where you can just cast good characters and have a good story and have like a great story, even if it's like mediocre characters or something like that. And that was kind of like the joy of the original series. None of those people were known actors. What was it? I think Harrison Ford might have done.
He had done one movie, and because of that, he was actually not considered for a long time. Because of that, I did American
Graffiti. American Graffiti. Yeah. I was trying to think of it. And then Mark Hamill did one movie before that. I don't remember Carrie Fisher's before that.
She was a new actress on the scene.
Yeah, famous mother. But you know, you're talking about an ensemble cast of people that knew that they were new people. And then, well, I mean, like Alec Guinness had his career. He was far more accomplished.
Well, I think that was the point of it. You had a character established who was a figure for wisdom, guidance to a bunch of kids who were nobodies, essentially. And I think that was part of the story. That's what George was going for.
Right. And see, that's the other thing too, is that so you rolled the dice on the actors, but you created this big, larger than life, great story. And then because of that story, you got drawn into these characters. And as soon as you start hitting Empire, you're not only bought into the story, but you're bought into the characters that are in there because of the story. But now we just want everything to be connect with the character, connect with the character, connect with the character, but you're not actually like treating the story with that much respect. And I think that that's the disconnect, at least for, that could be like for me and maybe a lot of people. I don't know.
I think one of the differences in a story now compared to then. So, like, Han Solo is one of our favorite characters, obviously, but I don't feel like either of us connect with him as a person necessarily. Realistically, I mean, we don't see ourselves in him. That doesn't mean that he can't be a good character that we can enjoy. But, I mean, Han Solo is a character that rises above a lot of other good characters.
Mm-hmm.
That's one of the reasons we like him. I feel like nowadays the storytelling vehicle is to have a large cast of just really stupid people or incompetent people and have one person who you're supposed to relate to who is just the one awesome person in the room and everyone else is just shitty,
Yeah.
Mind my French, but I don't know. It's not my type of storytelling, so I'm biased against it. I understand a lot of people like it, and that's fine. Hey, you can vote for it by going to see a movie or not going to see a movie. You have that right.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. And not watching stuff doesn't make you one thing or the other. It just means that you're not into it, and that's not a bad thing. One thing that I did see a quote. I actually didn't vet this quote, so it could have been like just out of context or whatever. But there was something out there that possibly, in quotations, allegedly, Kathleen Kennedy had said something about, wanting Star Wars movies to be more like a James Bond event. You know what I mean? And I thought that was kind of interesting because when did we want to be the big event like James Bond when we were the event? Like Star Wars was the event.
Star Wars is the event. Well, it was. It was during Force Awakens.
Oh, it 100% was.
I would think that's what you would want because Force Awakens was a rebirth of Star Wars, and it was a massive success. Why wouldn't you want to emulate that? It's your brand.
Yeah, well, they just...
And is James Bond really that huge of an event when it comes out? I mean, we're both fans of it, and they sell well. I mean, obviously they wouldn't continue them without it, but is there like
internationally
that many people just losing their mind because there's an announcement for a new James Bond?
I think internationally there is. I think internationally, absolutely. But the other thing about Bond was always that he was in all of these locations. So it wasn't just like centered in one place. They had exotic locations, exotic cars, crazy weapons and gadgets and stuff. So it was like a larger than life spy movie. And I think that's what the captivation. It was such an overblown production for the different times in which they released. But I don't know. I mean, I think that kind of started to scale back, and no offense, but scaled back with the Daniel Craig era. Mm-hmm. Not that Daniel Craig was a bad Bond, because like Casino Royale is good. I like Casino Royale. And then what was the one after it?
Quantum of Solace. No, there was one after that. It was
I always forget this because I was doing
it was Casino Royale, Quantum of Solace, Skyfall.
Skyfall was the guy. Was that the one with the guy who lost his face or whatever?
Yes.
Okay, so it was funny because when we were rolling up to the most modern Bond, which I don't remember, was it No Time to Die or something like that? Or
sounds about right.
Something like that. Anyway, so I actually rewatched, and I was like, "Oh, I've never watched Skyfall." I forgot all about it.
Never watched Skyfall?
No, I didn't watch Skyfall until just before the movie hit the theater.
I remember mentioning after I watched it, I was like giddy about how they like kind of reset back to the 60s in a way because they killed off M and brought in Q. So it was kind of a prequel in a way.
Yeah, it was interesting. That one wasn't necessarily my favorite, if I'm just being honest about it. But sure, I would say the last one, whatever it was called, was not. I didn't really care for that one as much. It was fine, but it just wasn't the greatest movie. Quantum of Solace was fine. It was good.
Yeah.
But
Casino was better.
oh,
By far. I think Casino was the best of
by
the four.
far. But yeah, I think up to that point, yeah, you could absolutely say it because like '90s Bond was still pretty hot. I think the '80s there was a little bit of cooling. I think there's a lot of differing opinions about the what is it, Timothy Dalton era Bonds. He had the 2 movies, but then you're talking '60s,
The more
'70s.
fans were very aggressive.
What's that?
The more fans were very aggressive. They
Well,
did not want change.
I mean, Roger Moore was a good Bond, but he was getting old. He was getting a little too old for the role. But obviously, like '60s, '70s Bond, that was still a huge deal. '80s was what it was. I didn't mind Timothy Dalton as Bond. It was just very dark. But '90s it definitely picked up a lot.
Yeah, I mean, you had your action hero. It's like Die Hard and everything else. It was unique, but kind of a part of the time.
Oh, the '90s was action, just action movie, everything.
Ridiculous.
I mean, Harrison Ford, Bruce Willis,
place.
Tom Cruise was getting out at that time with the action movies. Everybody was
Vin Diesel, I guess, maybe late '90s.
I guess
maybe.
Maybe. I guess it was getting into it, early 2000s something, but
Lil the Rock maybe at the end too.
When was his first one? Because when it
I might be pushing into early 2000s.
I
don't know.
Maybe, yeah.
But Sean Connery era would have been like maybe second, third movie when it was really hyped up. That would have been an amazing time to be a Bond fan.
I would certainly agree. But at any rate, if you want to emulate that, you shouldn't have to. You already have the franchise that was that.
It's really kind of scary to think that they're trying to get that far away from their own brand that they make a comment like that. Or maybe it's just they weren't considering the implications of that statement.
And it might not have even happened. I don't know. I just saw it and it looked legit. But yeah, it kind of shows a little bit of the out of touchness. It's like, don't try and be like another franchise. Build your franchise. You have this gift that, even through Rise, you were still getting big money, but you got killed on Solo because you released it at a terrible time. It was terrible timing.
Same with Rogue.
Yeah, Rogue One grossed over $1 billion, so it was fine. But like,
still bad opinions of it though, or no opinions, I should say.
People need to get over that one. I think long term that one will still be a fan favorite. But like, if you handle these movies the correct way, like you should, you'll be fine. You can reset it, but you need to give it time. You need to give it breathing room. You need to write it well, and then you need to find good. Just don't get a director that is like a new guy. And not J.J. Abrams. Don't get like some big name guy. Get just
and don't go Marvel.
Don't go Marvel. And no offense, but like I'm a little tired of Taika Waititi. I'm a little tired of the guy.
I liked him at first, but I'm not really a fan anymore. And I'm sorry, Marvel is Marvel.
Yeah.
Star Wars is Star Wars.
And I'm not saying
they are both big enough that they can be separate.
I think so too. And I'm not saying he's like bad or he would do a bad job, but like the guy's outside persona that I've seen is just it's like, nah, man, I'm a little over it. And like even the first Thor movie I liked, the second one was fine, and then it just sort of
Love
progressively
and Thunder was terrible. Honestly, if I'm thinking about it,
yeah,
there were a couple moments that were kind of entertaining, but like the movie sucked in general.
It's too much meta joking, and it just kind of becomes a parody. So it's like, stop laughing at yourself, and just start making just a good movie, with a good plot. And I don't want to see Star Wars marveled, but we'll see as we go. But yeah, you just need to get some tried and true people. Probably. Oh wow, I'm whiffing on her name. Ron Howard's daughter.
Oh,
she's obviously been all. I'm gonna absolutely hate it when I figure oh, for Pete's sake, what the hell are you doing? My computer's doing weird stuff.
Bryce Dallas.
Bryce Dallas Howard. There we go. Yeah, so Bryce Dallas Howard could probably do one, although we've had some ups and downs. Even just bringing Ron Howard back in, I think would be interesting. But you just got to get, just get a solid, not the flavor of the moment director. Just get a solid director, and I think you'll be fine.
Yeah, like make a solid 5-year plan for this.
I don't think
Don't wing it.
I don't think they have the capability to do that anymore. I just think they're going to try and throw it, but we'll see. We'll definitely see. But anyway, just so that we don't continue this too awful long, how's your week been?
Mundane to begin with, but it's gotten better today. Kind of falling into the middle management trap where I'm working, getting into that and trying to transition from labor to managing people has not been fun, especially when it's a lot of undermotivated people. It's very soul-sucking, and I can't stand it. Did get a call back for a job, and it's actually a local job in my hometown.
Oh.
Hybrid role, so I will be having a phone interview tomorrow for that, and hopefully that will go well.
Cool.
Yeah, other than that, just still in the process of moving and trying to cram too much activity into very little time.
Well, yeah, isn't that usually how it goes, though?
I keep saying at some point I'm going to get back to a normal schedule where I actually, have time to enjoy life. I feel like I haven't had that since before I started school, and it just keeps rolling on and on.
Yeah, that's really not how it works. Life just marches on to its own beat. You kind of get through it and try and set the times you can, but realistically, the more you fight against the flow, the faster it seems to go. So you just kind of set yourself in there and go with the wave, I think.
Yeah, for sure. What about you? How's your week going?
Not too bad. Just, pretty fairly standard work week, I guess. Nothing too crazy. I mean, my life does tend to sort of get in that mile a minute sort of zone as it is. It's kind of hard to really get a ton done. I mean, it's funny because like I'll think I haven't gotten anything done, but then look around, it's like, I guess I really did get some stuff done. Just never seems like enough.
I need to be reminded on a daily basis that I got enough done.
Yeah.
If nothing else, my wife is very good at reminding me of that because I'm a little too critical on myself with that.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Did buy a new grill though. That was fun.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice.
It was a grill.
Well, you didn't get a auto-loading pellet smoker grill?
No, I think that stuff's a little bit too overblown. It's way too many steps for just a grill. I've never thought that was like something I particularly wanted to do. I'm not one of those people who's like, I need to do artisan grilling after I've mown my lawn in my Birkenstock sandals. That I'm never going to be that guy.
I'm not into artisan grilling. I am interested in getting a better smoker. I'll give the auto-loading pellet smokers that.
Personally,
better,
I think the electric smoker works just fine for what I usually do with it. I mean, I will give it to like some of these other smokers that do a phenomenal job, but I am not that finicky. And when you get into a lot of the wood load, coal assist, all that good sort of stuff, it's too damn much. It's too darn much.
Kind of why I want the pellet style, because I don't want to put the effort into it, to be quite honest. Even like loading my wood into the small electric is a little annoying if I want to cook something all day and then not be stuck there all day.
Oh, well, I mean, if you're going to do big meats and stuff, you pretty much just have to plan that out. I mean, we have basically the same smoker now, and for mine, I would load chips every hour. Every hour, new set of chips, and that I've never had a bad result in that thing. But yeah, I mean, there are certainly some interesting smoking options, but I'm pretty good with mine for the time being. I don't get to smoke enough stuff as it is, but
Yeah.
I would like to do more eventually.
Yeah, I always say that's something I should do to like, oh, I'm just going to, buy bulk meat at Costco and save some money and smoke like some chicken for my lunches and everything. I never do it.
No. Yeah, meal prepping and all that is a joke. Nobody actually gets that done.
It'd be awesome. It really would. I
It
used
would
to do
be.
it when I was like, ironically enough, like late teens, just working, and I would meal prep all the time. And then I got a life. And meal prep does not. Everyone says that, oh, meal prep, you get more of your life back. It's like, no, I have a life, therefore I can't meal prep.
Yeah.
Because I'm not going to take an entire Sunday cooking for the entire week.
That's what you do. That's what you would have to do.
Yeah.
It's a full day thing. And then I'll
And
tell
I like
you what.
fresh food.
Yeah.
I like fresh made food. I don't want microwave food every day.
We've discussed this. We're not leftovers people. 2 days after, that stuff's going in the bin.
Yeah.
I'm not constantly eating on it.
Yeah, no, I mean, if it's like a really good soup, I'll consider it. But then, like, I have to portion out because if I cook it too many times, like the whole batch, it's ruined.
Yeah, you can't cook it that many times. But yeah, no. I'm not a big leftover guy. I couldn't eat the same thing every day anyway.
I'll do dinner and then lunch the next day, and then don't talk about making that for a solid 3 weeks.
Yep, 100%, man, 100%. Well, anyway, we're over a half hour mark, so there was Star Wars talk in there, but we better get on to the main topic of which the title will be, or we will upset the one person from forever ago, years ago, who said those horrible things on YouTube.
Yes, and don't worry, one person. This topic will be just as interesting as our conversation about smoking meat and meal prep.
Yeah. I'll tell you what, though, we could probably summarize this almost hour-long episode rather quickly, if I'm being frank about it. It's not that it's boring, because I do want to make a case, but the actual, like, whole summary
of it.
It's very simple. It's a very simple episode, and it shouldn't be taken any more than that.
Yeah.
So we do start off with Mando and Bo-Katan in the mines. They've bathed in the waters. Mando's getting a sample to bring back to his people.
They're no longer apostates.
Yeah. And so they basically go to fly off and get, ambushed by some TIE interceptors here that are basically like destroying Bo's home. Yeah.
Which I did like one comment in the living waters. Bo's just like, "You see anything while you're in the chasm? Anything alive?" Amanda's like, "No," and I just imagine her inner monologue to be like, "Yeah, good, you don't see it. You're not taking this like you took the dark saber from me.
Yeah.
It's mine."
Yeah. But anyway, we go back to Bo's moon. We have the attack. We destroy some ties, and then we are right into the actual crux of this episode.
Mando seemed a little useless in this dogfight. He destroyed like one tie.
It's fine, man. He's cool. He's fine.
But Bo's an awesome pilot. That was an awesome maneuver, so I appreciate it.
Well, they're obviously wanting to really emphasize, Katie Sackhoff's Bo-Katan here. It seems to be like the big thing of the season. It's like we have to protect Bo at all costs type of deal.
Yeah.
But in actuality, this episode winds up being more about good old Dr. Pershing. You remember Dr. Pershing?
Amber berries.
So we kind of have
Dr. Pershing.
Yeah, we have this plot with Dr. Pershing and Elia Kane, who we saw a little later, as a First Order member. And this is the sort of reintegration program for ex-Imperials. And I think that this is kind of like the subplotty, kind of like aftermath book stuff, where not all Imperials, people within the Empire, not all of them were terrible people.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of them were, but you did have an effort here to get some of these people back into the fold. Now, it is eerily reminiscent of like stuff like Operation Paperclip and like all the Nazi reintegration too, which we probably shouldn't have done. Just saying, we didn't need to help those SOBs out.
This was an absolute ripoff of that.
Well, and it is topical.
Yeah,
because we talk a lot about like wanting to fight evil, and then we let evil in our midst a lot. And not saying like Dr. Pershing's necessarily like an evil guy, but as we see through this episode, his research is his drive, and his research isn't something that we're necessarily wanting to do. But then we see the aristocratic Coruscant, and you realize that the old empire, or the old republic, is just a lot like the empire, or the new republic's like the old republic, which is like the empire and all this stuff. So
yeah, almost like none of these systems of government actually matter or change or get better.
And they don't. And this is always like the biggest slap in the forehead when we talk about, you know, Mon Mothma's efforts and the New Republic's efforts, and how little they actually changed in that time, how little they actually did to start making a better world for everybody else. They basically slipped right back into the corruption, which then led to the ascension of Palpatine.
You know, it almost makes you wonder if, like, in a weird way, with all of these references to World War II, like, do you think Mon Mothma is supposed to be like a Churchill?
No. I mean, from my standpoint, if we're gonna do historical figures, I think, you know what? Actually, that's not a bad analogy. The more I think about it, because Churchill really was kind of, and no offense to our English fans, but like reading history and so forth, Churchill really towards the end of his power was kind of not a disgrace, but people really started to realize how ruthless he was, and how while he was like a great wartime leader, when you get out of war, he really didn't quite fit the mold of what they needed at the time. You know, so sometimes you have people that just lead in certain eras, and that's all that they're meant for. But
yeah, he was wonderful for motivating people through hell.
Yeah,
essentially.
Yeah,
and that was his calling, and it was time to give it up after that.
Absolutely,
he got him through hell.
But he did. He came back. He came back later as well, and you know, it's tough. But yeah, the more I think about it, that actually is a pretty good analogy, because I was trying to think of some of the other world leaders at the time, and I'm like, no, that might be the most appropriate, because it's like she was almost like a pseudo beacon at the time of the rebellion, but then really became ineffective within her own dream.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, that's actually interesting. But anyway, back to Pershing. So he gives a speech. He rubs elbows with the aristocrats, who are all terrible people, which I'm sure is an analogy for, you know, all the millionaires and billionaires today, because that's what we're supposed to think of them. And which is ironic, seeing as you have a company that's one of the biggest companies, richest companies out there, trying to tell us to hate the rich, but not us, because we're the cool rich people. But anyway, that's a whole nother tangent. And then we have him coming back home to almost like this apartment block where all the Imperials are together. And, you know, we kind of like, you know, we're having a drink, we're talking about ration packs and old times and all this stuff. And it's kind of interesting to see these people's, you know, kind of perspective, and also how they are like really accepting of Pershing as well. It's like, yeah, come on over. You're one of us.
I almost expected them to be kind of crappy towards him being a scientist versus the military.
Yeah.
It was interesting the route they went with that. And it is interesting that like there's no seemingly there's like no one just trying to sneak through this. Like they all truly believe in the New Republic based on this conversation. So kind of not to say that like the Empire deserved much better, but it kind of goes towards like the indoctrination that they went through in their program, which is essentially what happened. I mean, it's the same as what the Empire did, just a little less ruthless.
Yeah. But I did kind of enjoy this conversation, though. It's like, what do you miss? It's like, oh, I miss the lights of hyperspace. All the uniforms fit better. What do you miss? Oh, no, I'm glad the Empire's gone. It's like, nah, man, not like that. We're all, of course, it's terrible. But like, what do you miss? It's like, I do miss those yellow travel biscuits.
I liked my biscuits.
I thought that was... It was kind of funny, you know, just like the little things you become accustomed to in general, and when they're gone, it's kind of, you know, it's like losing comfort. Yeah. And then what happens? An entire crate of biscuits magically appear. Mm-hmm. They're just magically delicious, you know.
Right after she gets through saying like, yeah, you can't find those around here anymore.
Yeah. And then we get into his day job, and he's basically scrubbing Imperial data records. They're not actually like learning anything from them, and it's kind of upsetting for him because he's like, hey, there's information on here, and all. It's like, nah, just we're behind, scrub it.
Yeah, I mean, he's essentially potentially deleting his own life's work.
Yeah. Well, and that's the other thing. It's like, it's a terrible decision. What's the quote? You know, if you fail to learn from history, you're doomed to repeat it. There's a lot of information here that, you know, we taught in Alphabet Squadron, some of the connection to, what was that operation? Palpatine's spite plan. Cinder. Operation Cinder, and how that was all interconnected. And then we learned further in that series about how many records he kept on everybody. You know, those are things that you could potentially learn from, but like they're scrubbing it. And it's like, maybe not the best idea. Like, maybe you actually need to learn this, like categorize it, put it somewhere so that you don't repeat it. But again, that doesn't...
Oh my God, we've talked about this before, and not that it's a consolation prize or anything, but modern medicine is where it is because of the horrible things that went on in these wars. The god-awful things that happen, and to just... I completely understand the ethical debate of it, but to throw it away, to make all those people's lives basically lost for nothing.
Well, that's why...
You really have to stop and wonder what they would think.
Yeah, I don't remember the exact quotation, but that's kind of why the difference between good and evil is actually paper thin. The difference between right and wrong is very, very close to each other. And yeah, I mean, you're right. If you want to continue down the World War II angle, there were a lot of things that, you know, unfortunately the Germans did, and then even the Japanese did. A lot of people don't necessarily think about that too much, but sort of the atrocities that happened to a lot of the Koreans during all of that garbage, you know, all very hard to even think about, let alone learn about. But, you know, the ethical dilemma is that, you know, if this knowledge helps save people, is it truly fully evil? Like, the methods were evil, but is the knowledge evil? It's a terrible thing. But yeah, obviously the New Republic is trying to scrub as much of this as possible, get the taste out of their mouth and move forward. And, you know, instead of learning more about that, we go take a trip in the park. Let's go get some light up suckers that we eat really strangely.
My God.
It's
melting. It's like, what do you mean it's melting? It's not ice cream.
It's just like, I've never really looked at people like eating an ice cream bar, but boy, do the two of these actors just make eating ice cream just look really awkward.
I want to know what they were told. Like, okay, this is what you're going to be eating, but this is how you have to eat it. Like, what did they compare it to? Because it doesn't even seem like they were told, like, okay, act like you're eating an ice cream bar.
Well, I mean, what would I do? I would start to, like, bite it. Like, I'm not going to sit there and just awkwardly, and just like lick
No,
it
that's
all
what
over
it
the
is.
place.
It's like a ring pop.
Oh
Like,
God.
I'm going to touch it, but I'm not going to do anything else.
It was funny, but you start to see sort of this potential, like, I don't know, friendship between Kane and Pershing. And then as we move on, we see Pershing going to this droid psychologist thing.
Yeah. With the most generic, obvious questions possible. Really puts into perspective how little effort they really put into rehabilitation.
Well,
it wasn't really about rehabilitation as much as assimilation into a society.
Yeah, it's like get over it, get with the program. We're not actually going to help. Because here's the thing. Think about how many people are just on Coruscant and in the galaxy in general. It would be like such a huge thing to give all these like actual psychologist jobs, but you have these droids, which who the hell knows if these records are even being reviewed?
Right. Realistically, they're probably not unless they're pinged by the droid.
Yeah.
Like, hey, this person's probably a problem. All the good ones, nobody cares.
Yeah.
They're just silently suffering.
Yeah, it's very mechanical, it's tedious, and then, we're just sort of seeing Pershing, sort of start to have some of that doubt. And then Kane's over here just sort of stoking it a little bit. It's like, maybe I should do some of my research. Well, what do you need? Like a mobile lab? Well, I don't know. I mean, it's possible. I got you some yellow biscuits, so we'll see.
Yeah, at this point in the story, I couldn't really tell the angle they were going with. I didn't think they'd go the route they did. I was kind of leaning towards maybe... I don't know. I don't know if I was thinking Remnant, but maybe First Order, like the first inklings of it.
Yeah. Well, and I think that's what they're doing. But we see a couple of Pershing's days here. He's at work. He's trying to make a difference. But it's like, in order to do that, you have to submit a form and all this stuff. I've never seen it happen. And it's that whole deal where the old bureaucracy is the same as the new bureaucracy. It's just bureaucracy. They don't actually want to do anything. They just want to keep pushing it forward, pushing it under the rug. So.
Yep.
It's interesting. And then we get, Pershing making a decision. He wants to continue his work. He's going to go get a mobile lab, and Kane is going to help him get it. And then we get a scene which reminded me a lot of Rick and Morty on the train. Tickets, please. Yeah. Oh my God, tickets, please, guys, ripped.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's an interesting creature. I kind of liked it. Not gonna lie.
Yeah, an interesting kind of droid there, but we wind up basically I think to where, maybe Cal Kestis was working.
Right.
Yeah, just in the decommissioning yard here.
It'd be funny if you just saw him climbing around in the background, just doing parkour.
Parkour.
He's I can't think of his name now, but his buddy that gets killed in the beginning of the game is like, Cal, you're gonna fall and get hurt.
Oh God. Well, I mean, this would be a jump in timeline, obviously.
Sure.
But it would be kind of funny. But so we're going through this Star Destroyer, looting, and then oops, Kane wasn't your friend at all.
Big shocker.
Set him up. Totally set him up. I actually didn't really understand this all that much. Like, I suppose the idea is that Kane is trying to get deeper and deeper, and if she has to burn people to be more trusted, I guess that's the point, maybe.
Well, I tried to kind of go back, like, did they interact even that much? Like, is there any animosity between them? And I just can't think of anything.
I don't think so. I think the idea is she's just trying to get deeper in, And yeah, ultimately he, Pershing's going to be mind flayed.
It's not a mind flare. It's something similar.
It's like, it's totally cool. Don't worry about it. I know what this is. I know what
It's
it
a
is.
trap.
It's a
Did
trap.
Did you love there was a trap? And then that guy just paused for a second, like, a trap. It's a trap. It's a trap.
Yeah.
Just like the idea of all Montgomery people being scared of traps in general.
Yeah. But it's
I hate this part of this part of the episode. I truly hate though, because like it just shows how this makes me care so little of everything that Mon Mothma says about how they need to do better and be, kind and peaceable when she signed off on this. Realistically.
Yeah, I mean, not obviously directly, or maybe directly, but we don't know. But I mean, this is the same sort of barbarism that you would have seen, decades ago when, we were putting people through lobotomies and then shock therapy and all this stuff, and not really understanding the mind all that much. We're just trying to find, quick fixes. Here, take a pill. Here, let me shock your head. Here, let me do this.
Just shut up, essentially.
Yeah. And it's like,
ironically, it kind of contradicts the whole deal where they're scrubbing data from the Empire, because essentially they're taking Imperial practices and slightly modifying them.
Yeah.
And then justifying it by saying it's a different machine. When it's not.
Well, and the other thing, too, about this is like towards the end, one of the technicians is like, oh, you're a real credit to the program. It's great to see how, it worked for you. And, it's too bad it doesn't work. But it's like, it's kind of like, those cop things where they're like propositioning people. So they're not actually catching them in a crime. They're making that person potentially agree to commit a crime, like, prostitution or drugs or anything like that. It's like, right. Yeah, but you're a cop. Entrapment. It's essentially entrapment, but like, I don't know. I mean, I think that that's the tactic they're using because they want to test the loyalty of these people, but you're not actually, I hate to say it, but it's like you're not actually helping them at that point. You're just trying to screw them over.
Yeah. Well, and the blatant disregard for the guy's safety when the one guy even says, I'll be here the whole time. And they all just leave and allow her to torture him. Well, like, how are you going to leave a machine running that's potentially so dangerous that could potentially kill someone, and then you all just leave them with the one ex-Imperial?
Yeah.
Who already is prone to bad moral decisions? Like, how freaking stupid are all these people to allow this?
Yeah, and it's very strange because, like, wouldn't the system record that the voltage was turned up? I mean, aren't you going to see this guy literally
if this isn't a mind flare, wouldn't you have not allowed the voltage to be raised that high?
Yeah, it's strange. Well, even past all that, maybe you don't catch that, but now you have this guy who's basically brain soup.
Yeah, and you're not going to see the recordings of that afterwards. You're not going to investigate this.
Yeah, it was very, very strange. I'm not,
and she's that confident that they're that stupid that she won't get caught.
Yeah,
like there's just a lot of stupidity in that scene. That, like I said, it's not. That is the reason I don't like parts of the episode. Like
no,
the
absolutely.
comments I've made so far.
Yeah, absolutely. But anyway, after that, we do get back to Mando and Bo and Grogu as they head back to Mandalorian cave planet with giant turtle monsters.
Yeah, instead of like earlier when we made the jump and then I got excited because I thought Mando was going to Coruscant for a split second.
No, sir, it's not going to happen. Yeah. But anyway, Mando has to, I'm not an apostate. I have a prostate and water. What? No, I mean, just words.
Here's some water.
Here's some water. So he's got to prove himself, right? So we get the Council of Mandalorians, which is so cool.
including the one really fat one. Not fat, but like big boned.
He's a big dude. Yeah, he's a big old brawny guy. Big old guy. Is that
No.
isn't still Favreau, is it? Because
I
didn't
don't
he
think
play
so.
that guy at one point in the season 2?
I thought he played the guy that's like the descendant of the one who created the Darksaber. Or did he play the flamethrower guy? I can't remember.
That's a good question. Now I'm thinking about it too much. I don't know. What was that guy's name even? You don't even remember, do you?
No, I don't.
Okay, fine. And the cast list isn't really doing it for me. It's whatever. It's cool. So anyway, we have our council, and Bo is keeping her helmet on. By the way,
Interesting.
we do show the waters. Mando's accepted back, and then we even actually get the acceptance of Bo-Katan as well, because she's bathed in the waters and hasn't removed her helmet since then either.
Yay. And if this was the real Bo-Katan, she would have taken her helmet off right then and there.
Now, as we get further into the storyline, I got to tell you, I don't necessarily mind a lot of this interaction, but we have to get further. We have to get further down. Because I know in the beginning, I thought the cult stuff was getting a little corny. But not to spoil anything or go into other territory, but let's hold off and wait a little bit, because I think you might like some of what's coming up. So
okay,
but anyway,
that's surprising coming from you, because neither of us like the cult stuff.
Yeah, for sure. But this is the end.
Yeah,
that's the end of the episode.
It is also the way.
It is the way. So I guess, unless there was anything else you wanted to chat about the episode, we can go into ratings. But what do you think?
Yeah, so IMDb is a 7, you said?
Yes.
Okay. It's not that it was a terrible episode. I'm not going to be a part of the mob. But it was pretty basic. The story was almost uncomfortably contained. I can't say that I don't like Dr. Pershing, but I can't say that I want to dedicate an episode to Dr. Pershing. It just didn't really interest me all that much. Not a terrible episode. I did like learning the politics of the New Republic. I want to know how terrible they were, even though I had a pretty good inkling of it. It just reinforced it for me and makes me care even less about characters like Mon Mothma and pretty much anyone running the New Republic at this point, which maybe that's a good thing, that Leia's really not like in the forefront of it. Like we talked about this in the Princess and the Scoundrel books.
Yeah.
Maybe it's a good thing that she's like taking a vacation and like trying to deal with assassins and stuff at this moment, instead of making terrible decisions along with the rest of the New Republic on how to deal with people. But yeah, I mean, there's just not a lot to talk about. It's not a terrible episode. It's not a great episode. It's an okay episode. So 7.2.
Okay.
But I'm not complaining. It's a filler. It's an extreme filler episode.
You're a terrible person. So, I mean, I have to agree with you. It was fairly middle of the road-ish episode. I did like the kind of look into the look into how the Republic is actually running right now, because I do think that it's important to like not put people on pedestals, and to kind of look at things the way they are. And so I didn't hate the episode at all. I found it interesting, far more interesting than I think a lot of people did. It's not, again, it's not the worst episode at all. It has a lot of good stuff in it. Now, I don't necessarily know that Pershing is the most interesting of characters here. I don't know if Kane's storyline is one that that people are going to be super crazy interested in, but I mean, I don't have a problem with it at all. I'm not sure that it's like the thing that everybody's like grappling for. But I think it is important to point out, like, even when you think you have the best government possible, the reality is that it's not really always going to be the best. Not again, there's no one size fits all thing. But I will say that there are a lot of people that just want to see Mando. They don't really want to see side missions. But I think it's important to see the greater scope. You could have just inserted Mando into something here that might have been better. I don't know, but it wasn't bad. It wasn't great. I was just gonna do a 7.5 and leave it at that. You know, fair to middling episode. Yeah. Nothing crazy, but you know, worth a watch at the very least.
Yeah, probably one of the weakest in the series, I'd say, if I had to kind of guess. Not that I remember all our ratings, obviously.
Yeah.
But that does go to the strength of the series, because even a very mediocre episode for this series is better than a lot of the decent content for a lot of the other Star Wars series we've watched.
Yeah.
So I'm not going to complain too much.
Yep, absolutely. All right, man. Well, I think that's about it. So, any other last words?
I do believe we are done here.
Good deal. Well, if any of you would like to interact with us on the socials, just get out there at TC Plan Podcast, Twitter, all that good sort of stuff. You can also send us an email, tcplanpodcast@gmail.com, if there's any topics you would like us to discuss. Whatever that might be, we're happy to hear from you. But I think it's about time for a sign-off, so you'll have a good rest of your week.
And as always, may the Force be with you.